Okay, so in the previous video, we went over cleaning up the plan sheets, or in this case, double plan sheets, plan and profile sheets, that sort of thing. We also talked about the sheet index and how we went ahead and printed out the sheets, created some PDFs, and in preparation for going out to the field. And out in the field, then when we actually designed this project, the next step was to go out into the field and get some pictures and just take a look at that project. So anyway, the next step in developing this project is going to be to start developing the proposed line work. And we're going to develop the line work in a DGN file called design. So let's go ahead and create that file. So if we take a look in ProjectWise and we go over to our design folder, we can take a look at the files that we have currently, and we can see that we still need to create our design file. So just like in the past, in order to create that file, we've got a couple methods that we can use. If you're at District 6, I had mentioned that the CAD manager typically puts a seed file in this folder. So you could use that seed file if you like, or of course the other method is to just go to File and New. Which that's what we're going to do this time anyway. Okay, so we're just going to rename that seed file. Of course, we'll start off with D, district number, then the contract number, dash, and then if we went to our file naming convention sheet, we would notice that it says the name of the file we should be using for our line work is design.dgn. And then for a description, I will go ahead and type in proposed line work. Or in your case, whatever you feel best describes what you're doing in that design file. But that's a pretty generic term that seems to work well in most cases. So I'm going to say OK here. And so it's creating that file for me. It's just asking me if I want to check back in the file that I was just in, so I went ahead and said yes. And so now we're sitting in a blank file, design. So the first step in this file would be to reference in whatever files we think we're going to use. So that would definitely be your alignment and your topo. There could be some others. You may want to bring in your aerial. I'm not going to do that right now, but oftentimes that can be valuable. Okay, so there's my topo file. There's my alignment file. Add those two, say OK. It's copying those files down from the server, and then asking if I want to say OK to accepting that reference file. Oh, looks like I grabbed an extra file. I don't think we're going to need the terrain right now, so I'll go ahead and detach that. So yeah, all I have right now is just the alignment in the topo. We'll just go for that. Go with that for now. Of course, by default, north is up. Sometimes I like to just rotate my screen. I'm not really rotating the elements on the design plane, but just rotating just the screen. So it's going somewhat in the same direction as it would in my plan sheets. It just makes it a little bit easier for me to operate this way anyway. Or you can just leave your north straight up, either way. Oh, one other thing I do like to do, if I've previously set up the plan sheets, I like to see where the name boundaries were for those plan sheets, just as a reference. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that file. Now remember, that's not in the design folder, but we place that in the CAD sheets folder. There it is, sheet plan. There, and now we're seeing the name boundaries for that double plan sheet. I suppose I could go ahead and reference in that plan and profile sheet as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. Again, it's in the CAD sheets, and I'm going to point to plan prof. Okay, that, and there it is. All right, so now I have all of my name boundaries. Remember, this one overlapped, but then we went in, when we did our cleanup process, we went into that CAD Sheets folder and then we masked out that section. So it looks like they're overlapping, but on the sheets, you know, they're really not. So, okay, so this is what we're going to end up with, is really just the double plan sheet and then a plan and profile sheet. Later, I think we'll go back and then we'll continue adding our sheets. I think for this demonstration, we may go out to this intersection. We'll see. I think for now, we'll just leave it as at this, because really that's just doing the same thing over and over again. And the purpose to these videos is to just take one section and just go through it. And then after that, it's more or less just doing the same thing over and over again. But for now, why don't we go ahead and get started with our line work. Okay, so first we have to decide, what it is that we're doing here. And when we started the project, we did get some scoping information. And basically, in the scope, what it called for is from the beginning of the job here on the left-hand side, all the way to roughly right around this station equation. There was a fairly recent project here. And so all we're doing there is just a single lift overlay. And then the middle one, the plan and profile sheet, that's more like a 3R, like a rehabilitation project. So we're going to be cutting cross sections through here, that sort of thing. And then beyond that is a more typical 3P type project where it's an overlay project, mostly, but both, it will include both, milling, binder, and surface course. In addition to that, we can talk about this later, but we also replaced all of the pipe culverts because they all had concrete head walls on them, which was a safety hazard, so we added in that work as well. But let's go ahead and get started on the line work. I think let me bring up the plans from this project, just so we can take a look at what it was that we did, and then we'll try to just recreate that and go through that same process. By the way, currently you can see the project was, I don't know, 7 or 8 miles long, I believe, but we're just, for the purpose of this video, we're just kind of working in this area right here. So let's first take a look at maybe the typical sections. In this case, we broke out the existing typical sections separately and then from the proposed. So I'm just going to go to the first proposed typical section. And that is here. Yeah, this is basically where the job starts out. There's some existing type A gutter that we're leaving in place. at the very beginning of this job. And like I said, it was just a single lift overlay. I think we just went with 2 inches, I believe. Let's see, I and G. Oh, I guess it was just 1.5 inch. So yeah, we milled 1.5 inch and put back 1.5 inch surface course. But let's take a look at the width of the pavement, because the first thing that we're going to be doing with our line work is drafting in the edge of pavement and the edge of shoulder. So we can see that the pavement was a total width of 26 feet or 13 feet in each of the lanes, and then we have 3-foot asphalt shoulders. We can look at some of the other resurfacing as it leads up to the beginning of our rehabilitation project. Here's one that's outside of the gutter section. And you can see we had some guardrail that we replaced. And then we get into our 3R type section. And now look here at the pavement width. You'll notice it's different. The proposed pavement width here is only 24 feet. But actually, if one thing to make note of too, maybe on this project, because we'll come back to it later when we talk about removal items. But in this particular case, there was some existing gutter. In fact, there were 2 sections of gutter. There was actually the original gutter when the pavement was originally built with 9-foot lanes. And then when they widened the project, rather than removing that gutter, they just built on an additional gutter on top of that, and then they just resurfaced over the whole thing. So for this particular project, we're going to need to replace all of that original gutter section, or basically 2 sections of gutter. And so that's what you see here. And so, but you can see ultimately the width of the pavement is going to be 12 foot, and then the type A gutter is a total of 3 foot wide. Okay, so that's mostly what we need to know for getting started on our line work. I'm going to skip the removal sheets and jump right to our plan and profile. So this was the end result on that beginning section of this project that was really just the resurfacing. So this is ultimately what we're going to work towards. You can see that we're doing all the line work that represents the edge of pavement, the gutter, the guardrail removal and replacement. We have a bridge omission. We had this pavement where the road was before it was realigned, which is now more of just like a little scenic bypass type thing. And so the scope actually calls for resurfacing that as well. And then we get into our plan and profile sheets. And so once we get into the plan and profile sheets, yeah, that's where we have the gutter sections. Ultimately, not in this file, but you can see we have some drainage. We added some under drains. Let's see, let me go to that previous sheet. Look at the very end. You're going to see that you see our gutter outlets, and then we added riprap at the end of the gutter outlet, and then tied into that existing riprap. And we can take a look at some pictures of this, so all this makes a little bit more sense. But you can see there's some entrances here, and we used our District 6 entrance detail here for those purposes. So we'll refer to that when we're doing the line work for designing the entrances. And we also had, at the very beginning of the gutter, we had that initial inlet section to the type A gutter. Okay, so now we know what we're going to do. Let me go ahead and minimize this. And like I said, we could look at some pictures real quick before we get started on the line work. Let's see. Let's take a look in this in a Google view. This was something that I learned recently. I think it's been around for a while, but this could be handy. You know, I could turn on my aerial that I have, but let me show you another method, which is also pretty nice because it quickly takes you to this spot in Google Maps and also allows you to, switch to a street view or whatever it is that you want to do. If you go to the Home tab and then Utilities, and then if you look under all the geographic tools right here, you'll see one that's called Open Location in Google Maps. And so you can select a style and a view. So if I wanted to see like the aerial type view, a satellite type view, or if I just want to have it open Google Earth for me to look at the maps, or I can I can have it also immediately open Street View. And then the zoom does, well, just as it says, it's, how zoomed into that area do you want to be. So all I do here is I just go to the spot where I would like to open Google right here. So I'm just going to data point right there in the pavement. And not only does it take me to Google Maps, but it also, puts me straight into the Street View mode if I choose to do so. Of course, we can always switch back and forth. But in any case, looking at Street View, what you're seeing here is what the pavement looked like, prior to the construction. I think I showed this earlier, but if I was to zoom out here and let's see. Okay, yeah, so as I zoom out, now I can see that aerial view, and we may have showed this earlier, but I did notice because this project was built so recently, just last summer, and it looks like Google has the finished product, or maybe it was during construction. I don't see any pavement markings yet, so yeah, this was probably taken during construction. But then when we drop in Street View, then we notice that Street View is still the 2023 version. So you can see what this section that we're improving looked like before this contract. Okay, why don't we stop the video there, and in the next one we'll get started actually drawing in that line work.